Morning at NTV. We're live from Kampala Serena Conference Center. I'm Andrew Chamagero Omuntuawansi. Today we've started it on a very light note. In studios with me, I have the RDC of Luero, that happens to be Mariam Naluwega. Good morning, RDC. And with us we have Sarah Birete. We are having a conversation about COVID-19. Sarah, from where you come from, what is the situation like in your area, in your hood, at the workspace? What is it like now?
Well, in the workspace, majority of people are working from home. We are using digital means. Of course, our work is somehow affected.
Oh, yes.
It increases operational costs, but we need to be safe.
Oh, yes.
Lives come first before work. In my community, I stay in a part of Namgongo. I have not had so much of COVID cases. But before lockdown, I know that our offices, majority of civil society offices had COVID cases.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So, but when you move on the road, we see ambulances, we see carrying caskets. All of us have been affected, a relative, a friend, social media, you know, the message is, now you see, when you see rest in peace, even you fear to open.
I don't want to see that. It's very disturbing.
Yeah, and we are traumatized.
RDC. Luero area, are the people adhering to the COVID-19 guidelines? How are you holding up as a district?
Yeah, actually in Luero we have registered some deaths.
Okay. And
COVID-19 is rampant. People are trying to adhere to the COVID-19 guidelines. However, they need sensitization.
Okay.
They still crowd around dead bodies. They still touch dead bodies at their leisure. There are a lot of myths about COVID-19. You know how someone dies suddenly, so people still take it as witchcraft, as poison, like when you tell them, no, this person died of COVID, but no, this person has been having diabetes for long.
Wow.
So actually we have to sensitize people. They are not actually taking the disease, so they are not very knowledgeable about the disease. And it could be, that is the main cause of why COVID-19 is spreading at a wide range in Luero district.
God to be with us all. We should be safe. We should stay safe. Play your part. COVID is a personal, but I will tell you that because I've been there, I've seen how bad it can get. Wear your mask, sanitize, and wash your hands with clean running water and soap, and avoid a very, very big crowds. Now, yesterday, police were talking and taking tough measures on the road implementation of the COVID-19 measures, warning motorists without stickers to stay home. Now, Mariam is going to be talking to us and celebrate about this. Let me start with you, Mariam. From where you sit as an RDC, you are part of the leadership of security teams implementing the curfew. Does it have to be that cruel? We saw a woman in Busa being badly beaten by a police officer, yet she identified herself as a nurse. She identified herself with a with an ID as well, and it was not dark. Does it have to be this cruel?
Not really. Actually, what the country is going through, we are going through a desperate state. Everyone is desperate, frustrated about the disease, but we should handle each other well. Much as like you're a police officer and you've lost someone, but once you're at work, handle people with humanity. Yeah, because this is all about enforcing. You should handle, as police officers, they should handle. We had a similar incident in Ibusika, whereby one of our traffic officers at the checkpoint pierced someone with a bayonet, and the person died instantly. And they were all arrested, and the reports I've received this morning, they are saying that they are demoralized, and even a checkpoint is not there in Ibusika. But what I appeal to the police officers, to the enforcers, that much as we are enforcing, we should put in some humanity. We should enforce, but we should again listen. Don't just rush to beat. Don't just rush to harass. You can never know, because the disease is really bad. People die suddenly.
You know, now you as someone who is on the security team, I'm wondering, have some of these officers had psychological reviews for the past year? Because last time we had a lockdown indeed, and the depression levels. Do some of these officers have, some, training of how to deal with this kind of situation?
I'll talk on behalf of Luweero. Actually, at the beginning of the lockdown, we received a group of people from Human Rights Commission who met the top leadership in police in Luweero, and there was an induction on how they should administer human rights as they handle people during the COVID lockdown. So some of them have had training, but others have not had training. But I would also want to appeal to public. Even public should cooperate with police. Much as police, some police officers are rude, but the public also seems to be resistant. They seem not to adhere to the guidelines of COVID-19. Take, for instance, the border riders. What they actually do, in fact, I've seen this on 3 various occasions. What they actually do, they risk their lives. They pass through checkpoints on a very high speed in order to beat the checkpoints. So sometimes, and then when he's on a high speed, then the police officer is running after him with a cane. Then it is terrible. There is an instance whereby the border rider and the police officer, they both fell on the tire cutter.
And it's risky.
Yes, risky. The border rider is rushing to beat the security. The security personnel is also running. So I think we should have that kind of cooperation. The public should cooperate and adhere to the guidelines of COVID-19, and even police should also handle people like it's handling human
Sarah,
beings.
Thank you so much, RDC. I really love this school of thought where you're coming from. You're being civil. You're being nice. I really like that. But Sarah, have we given the president the mandate to make law and legislation on TV, where he comes and says, now this is going to be the law? We want to know, how much is this legal, whatever is going on currently?
Well, using the Public Health Act of 1935, which is as draconian as you hear the year it was enacted, yes, the ministry and the government can enact regulations in management of a pandemic like we are under, a public health emergency. But the right procedure would have been the Constitution. And through the Constitution, and we saw many countries, including Kenya, enacting the emergency, the Public Health Emergency Act, that are updated, that suit modern times, and these regulations would quickly pass through and be approved by Parliament. They would have that consensus, as much as you can have. We know COVID came, we've been with COVID for 1.5 years. So it's no longer the knee-jerk reactions. Whereas in the first phase, it would be understandable, you know, to do knee-jerk reactions. I think our government thought COVID had ended. Yet we saw COVID was ongoing. Other countries are in 4th wave, other countries are expecting 5th wave, but for us after 1st wave, we never planned beyond knee-jerk reactions. And you can see the crisis in the health sector. Security has partly improved from the first lockdown was really terrible with brutal human rights violations. There's a slight improvement, but about 4 people have been murdered countrywide under the guise of enforcing SOPs. So I think it is what the security forces need. And I'm glad Madam RDC is here. She's the head of security in her district. They need to exercise the conduct of a reasonable man. If I have been telling people, if I wake up from my bed at midnight and I'm on the road with my child, all places are closed except hospitals. Where do you think I'm going? Am I going in a bar? Am I going in a disco? Really? Isn't that common sense? Wouldn't I wish to be in my bed? You know, a conduct of a reasonable person. So if you have such situations, I'm leaving my home at 10 p.m. Where do you think I'm going, for heaven's sake, other than a hospital? You think I don't sleep? So really, these are simple things that a reasonable person would understand with ease. In
the wave we're dealing with.
Yes, because we have so many patients that are unable to access tests because of the costs. And you know the policy in government hospitals, they test those who are sick, those who have clear symptoms and the immediate contacts. But under the Delta variant, the issue of contacts and the rate of community spread has completely lost meaning.
Yes.
So you have a huge population, a huge sector of our population that cannot afford tests to know whether they have COVID or not. You have people that cannot afford essential drugs. So we have all this sickness going on in the community, and people can collapse, people can fall disease anytime. So they need to rush, there's no time. We have a crisis of all families testing, everybody in the family testing positive. So imagine if I have a family of 7 and we are all positive, and I'm the one rushing to drive to make sure I'm in hospital before I fall very sick. What patience do I have with security to explain that all my family is sick and I'm rushing before I get weak?
You're agitated. So now this brings me to the next question to you. I saw this yesterday when we had the Deputy ROCC of Nakawa Division, because in Tinda, Chisasi, Chigowa, Chanja, they all seem to be not in a lockdown. So yesterday he was tough. Did you as leaders take time to plan better for the second wave? Or are our leaders in the know that there are more waves coming, that we plan better?
Yeah, we've been planning better for the second wave because yes, our COVID district task force meetings have been sitting. We have been planning and we expected.
You see, now that's the problem we have. Every time we come to the leaders, they're in a crisis meeting, but we don't see what's going on the ground. What's going on in there?
But then we've been enforcing, even before the lockdown, we've been enforcing the guidelines of COVID-19. Take, for example, in Luwero, we had a tour in all schools in the district to make sure that the guidelines are being adhered to. We've been working, we've been sensitizing. On whichever platform we would get, we would always talk about COVID-19. We've been enforcing the guidelines. We expected the wave, and did not catch us by surprise. Therefore,
the wave did not catch you by surprise. You're 2 weeks into, actually not 2 weeks. The first 10 days were not counted. Now we add on the 2 weeks. That makes it what? 14 plus 10, we're like 20 plus days. Still, we have not received any relief from the government. If the government was really well planned, as you say, and on the ground, you guys had planned adequately, shouldn't people have relief by now? They said the money is coming via mobile money. I'm waiting for Nabanje's message. It's not popping.
The relief is there.
Do you qualify?
That's the thing.
The Prime Minister mentioned 58 billion for relief. The 58 millions for relief are there, and people are going to receive their money. Now, they are still working on the accounts.
On the accounts?
Yes.
And what are we feeding on? Because according to the dynamics from the government, where you're saying that you sat down and you plan for the next waves, if you give me 100,000 Ugandan shillings as a Ugandan, every day I have to spend 2,300 Ugandan shillings for the next 42 days. Did you really plan?
Yes, we did plan. 100,000 can really do something in a home. You can stock food. You can buy. You can buy charcoal.
For a family of how many?
Oh my God, Sarah, just put this to context. Do you feel that our government planned adequately? Is our Ministry of Health and Minister of Finance prioritizing the current wave? Because we are in the second wave. Some countries are having the fifth wave or the fourth wave and all that. When you look at the dynamics at play, do you really think there is planning, Mariam is alluding to?
When you look at our budget, that will be effective in a few days, I think.
Thursday.
Yes. The technocrats looked at COVID second wave as a possible risk. The components in the budget, there's some money, 500 billion for vaccinations, which is not enough. I think that can't even immunize 1 million Ugandans. There is little money. You see how we have allowances. We can't pay allowances for risk allowances for our doctors. There are no essential drugs in hospitals. The PPEs are nowhere to be seen. We are in an oxygen crisis, and many people are dying because of lack of oxygen to support them. So what kind of planning was this? And when you go to the budget, I think there is a need to change the whole first quarter of the budget and focus on COVID, both on treatment, testing and treatment, access of essential drugs, immunization, and maybe relief for the vulnerable. the first quarter of the first budget. In the absence of that, we see the crisis going on in private hospitals. And I know many people have castigated
very much so
private hospitals. But management of a pandemic is not the business of private operators.
It's not the usual business.
No. Even the private hospitals provide 20% of health care.
True.
So why are we castigating individual Ugandans struggling to save lives? If they explain to you the dynamics of procuring essential drugs needed to save lives,
you understand it.
Yes, because we know immediately after the first wave, the cost of masks shot by, I think, 300%.
And they're not being made in Uganda.
Yes. Before COVID, I think a box of masks was about less than 10,000?
Yes.
Immediately it shot to 50,000.
You can imagine.
So how about the other essential things that are being used in private hospitals, including PPEs that the government has failed to secure for their own workers, including risk allowances where in private hospitals you have to pay people. You don't have a luxury of being in areas like we are seeing in public service.
Oh, yes.
So what the government should do is to consider these as playing a critical role in helping break the chain of spread of the pandemic and save lives. Wow. So government should subsidize these essential drugs. If we were organized and planned, government would procure essential drugs and put them in private hospitals as a subsidy to the people accessing health care.
Yesterday in the Daily Monitor, we saw the PS of the Ministry of Health, Dana Twin, saying that procurement laws frustrated the preparation they should have had. And she comes from the school of thought that maybe some laws need to be, a little bit loosened for this kind of emergency code, that we first sail through this and then they can come back. What's your thought on that?
After the first wave, where government tried, save for the gross human rights violations by security.
True.
Government, Ministry of Health tried on the side of care, testing, contact tracing, and management of the pandemic in the first wave. After the first wave, and through experiences like Diane is sharing today, they should have gone to Parliament and initiated the act I'm talking about.
Themselves.
Yes, the Public Health Management Act in situations of emergency. That should have addressed issues to do with procurement, because now you cannot change national procurement laws just to be based on a pandemic. That's why in the Constitution we have provisions for emergency, but the Constitution is actualized by acts of Parliament.
True.
So because of our knee-jerk and lack of planning after lessons from the first wave, these are the challenges Diane is facing. These are the issues she should have tabled immediately after managing the first wave and easing and breaking the chain of infections. So these are the challenges. The pandemic is going on globally. Can we prepare better? But they all went to sleep and dropped the ball.
RDC, Mariam Nalubega, this is where we are.
Yeah.
You've had the planning and her school of thought and what she thinks should have been done. We want to thank the government for the efforts it has done. But where do you think, as government, you went wrong?
Like you're all aware, we are in a third world country.
Meaning?
And sometimes, yes, and sometimes resources are not enough. We cannot, the economy cannot afford to provide food for everyone. That is the reality. It cannot afford to provide food for everyone in the lockdown. Our budget is not really big compared to the budgets of the developed countries. Therefore, but the government took its measures to preach how to overcome COVID-19.
Now, in the wake of the lockdown, you've locked me at home and the business is all down, and you send me a token of 2,300 Ugandan shillings, 100,000 Ugandan shillings, which is taken 20 days without actually coming through.
Yeah, like
and you planned adequately and we can survive, Mariam?
Yes, like the president said, we are in a war. People in war survive. This is survival.
But how do we survive? You see, now that's the problem I have with Mariam, with people like you in government. We have, we are wishfully thinking that things are working on the ground, but they're not actually working. People are home for 20 plus days. The vulnerables, actually the vulnerables like the elderly, the single mothers, they're those with HIV and AIDS and they cannot go out to fend for themselves again. And you're saying we are going to survive. How do we survive?
Now, for the vulnerables, government has arrangement of putting some mobile money on their phones. But what is happening in the country? We have a lot of food. Food is in abundance. In fact,
food is in abundance, but they are not allowed to actually drive or jump on a bike to go to the markets and buy food.
They even have money. Those
and they don't have money in their homes. So what is the planning like? We need to understand as countrymen the strategy you had as government and how do we plug in and how does it actually play on our side as well?
But again, people can access food in the markets.
With the money.
Oh God.
Yes, they can access.
So what does it mean?
Let me first talk. I'll not talk a lot for people in the urban settings.
Yes.
Because I work in
we're talking on national scale.
Yes, we're talking on national scale, right? But what I know in the country, currently, we have a lot of food. There are complaints from Barara. There are complaints from Barara that a bunch of matoke goes for 1,000 shillings.
Here it's at 6,000. Yes, true.
Yes. So we have food.
We have the money, but we have the food, but we don't have the money.
We have food. We have food, and food is cheap.
To buy using what? RDC, that's what I want to know. As a Ugandan, I don't have the money. I've been in the lockdown for 20 plus days. It's a measure. I will abide by it. Government promised me some relief. It's not forthcoming. And the RDC is telling me we have food.
The relief is coming. I would like to appeal to the nation. Right now we are in a crisis. We should not look at government alone as a source of savior. We should also look at other people who can afford
Which
to reach
other
out.
people you've told us they shouldn't be in physical interaction with us? We're fighting a war, yes?
Voluntary. You can send 10,000 shillings to your friend on mobile money, voluntary. Chamagero.
Oh,
I'm coming back to you.
Just a moment, let me just take a break for now. Because
agree with me.
I will agree with you a little later. Just hang in there, Mariam. Let me talk to my friend Stephen Mbide on the ground. Mbide, you are at Wandegea, you understand. Let's understand what's the situation like there. How many officers do you see within your vicinity and the people adhering to the SOPs? And that's it. Mbide, have you received a message from the Right Honorable Nabanja?
I'm still patiently waiting for that message from Honorable Robina Nabanja because I know she has to send that message. I won't mind whenever it comes. I will be grateful to receive that message. But away from that, on matters talking ground here at Wandegea, Unzo government omuntu awansanti dakati echido chikaye because now the officers are even trying to away from the barricade because right across that side the officers trying to stop people trying to say those that lockdown are those that people have to stay home, and those who are supposed to be on the road like they are essential workers. I'm talking about those who are driving. Not only your permit is enough for you today, what they are trying to do is driving permit is your vehicle.
I think I'll tap a little bit later to Stephen Mbide. We're trying to see, given the lockdown 2 weeks down the road plus 10 days that were not counted by the president of this great nation, and how are we surviving? Mbide, are you still there? Okay, I'll get back to Mbide later. Honorable, the RDC, Mariam, it's disturbing to comprehend that from your lenses, we have enough food as a country, which is a fact, but the purchasing power is very low, and you're telling us to thrive on. How do we navigate this?
I'm not telling you to thrive on. I'm saying that money for the vulnerables is coming, and I'm also appealing to the rest of Ugandans to share. We are in a crisis. We should not look at government alone as a savior. We should share. If you have something, you can share with
How many people have you shared with ever since we went under the lockdown?
I've shared with all my neighbors. Recently, my husband bought a sack of rice, a sack of...
He has the powers. He's the
No, he
this
doesn't
is
have.
our husband.
No, he doesn't have. But he has that heart of sharing. So as we wait on government, as individuals, we should look at our neighbors. You're eating chicken. Is your neighbor eating chicken? Let's share the little resources we have. We are in war. And we cannot, this is the reality. We are looking for means of survival.
Let me tell you what the reality is on the ground.
Survive.
This
situation is not forever.
Yes, it's not forever.
But we should look for surviving techniques.
Let me tell you the reality.
As we are going through hard times.
Yes, we're going through hard times.
As government is planning to give us something,
yes,
especially the vulnerable, as individuals, we should not eat alone.
Let me tell you the reality.
We should share with the rest.
Yes, thank you. We will share, but this is the reality on the ground. People are broke. I'll be very blunt here. People are broke. We had some people who lost their jobs in the first wave. We had some companies that downsized and cut the salaries of some people, and these people went back again in the second lockdown. And these are the people who are vulnerable. These are Ugandans whose businesses are now in shambles. And you're telling us to find a way to thrive, basing on hold my shoulder, I hold your shoulder. Sarabirete, when you listen to what the RDC is saying that, well, the relief will be coming and all that, do you think we have a contagious plan as a country in relation to the disaster preparedness ministry?
Of course, what Madam RDC has confirmed is that the leadership of this country is detached from reality.
Very true.
RDC is among the most VIPs in the district. And she's on the VIP radar nationally.
Yep.
And she's comparing her situation to poor and vulnerable Ugandans. Just out of the first lockdown, 1.8 million people slipped into poverty.
True.
For the industry sector, let's use Kampala as a sample. In Kampala, which generates 80% of our national revenue, majority of people are employed in the service and industry sectors. Out of these sectors, in the first lockdown, 60% lost jobs. And operational costs increased by 10%. And these are national statistics released by UBOS just in last month. We have 36% of Ugandans out of the money economy. So as you talk about vulnerable people, you are talking of 36% who feed from hand to mouth of Ugandans. Before you even reach to those who have lost jobs, those whose salaries have been cut because of lockdown. Many organizations pay half, 50% because people are at home. So when you factor in all these issues, and you have a national leader saying people can survive, why should you eat chicken when your neighbor? Really, this detachment from reality is part of the problem that we have with zigzag planning as a nation. I know that we have gone through national prayers. Cabinet has taken longer compared to the first lockdown. In the first lockdown, even cabinet would have special sittings twice a week or whenever it was necessary.
Oh, yes.
Now you have cabinet lamenting and saying that they are waiting for Monday meetings. I don't know what they decided. You have people dying. Why are people still coming to town amidst lockdown and brutal? How do you sit home with the children with no food? And secondly, if you fell ill, even if it was not COVID, poverty will kill you faster. Lack of food, hunger than COVID. So we should not give Ugandans a choice to be faced with choosing how they should die, either of hunger or COVID. This is the choice we have slapped in the hands of vulnerable people in this country.
Well, it's a conversation we're still having. Mariam, I'm coming back to you. We're just going to take a simple break. The hashtag is Morning at NTV. I'm Andrew Chamagiro. Let's take a break and we'll be back shortly. Morning at NTV, we are live from Kampala Serena Conference Center. I'm Andrew Chamagiro. And we are having a conversation in the lockdown. In studio with me, I have the Deputy RDC of Luwero District, that is Mariam Nalubega, and from the Center for Constitutional Governance, I have Sarah Birete. Now, earlier on, you said that food, unquote, Mariam, you said food isn't a problem to many Ugandans right now. There is a lot of food and actually it's cheap. Now, there is feedback for you on Twitter. Israel says but they haven't been talked about the banks and the loans Ugandans owe to the banks. We need to know the strategy of the government this time around. Then Trebaza Shafiq says, one cannot talk about food prices being low to justify our food availability. The farmers are equally affected. Can't government work out a plan on how to get the food reach its citizens? What's the work of the Ministry of Agriculture? Because now this should be the time that the village officer on agriculture desk could now be mobilizing how we're getting food. Mojisha Janet says, what is the definition of cheap? If she thinks 5 to 10K is cheap, hundreds to Ugandans don't have that, can't access food economically. Well, food is there, but how can we access it? That said, let's look at this from where you are. Do you think as leaders in government, you have effective systems to reach out to the vulnerables?
Yeah, there are effective systems.
Like?
Actually. There are effective systems. In the recent lockdown, the government mobilized food for its people, and relief was distributed to different Ugandans. The government can never sit down as Ugandans are suffering. Government has always been there in this second wave.
Mariam, those were knee-jerk reactions. We were dealing with something we didn't know. Now, do we have systems that can reach the vulnerable people? You in your okay, let's use you in Luwero.
I'll not talk for the Prime Minister.
No, let's talk in Luwero.
The Prime Minister was very clear.
In Luwero, Mariam, let's tone it down. In Luwero, what systems do you have to identify the vulnerables and reach out to them?
The LC chairpersons in their villages know the vulnerables. It is all about approaching the LC1 chairperson to identify the lame, the sick, the old, and all that.
So
if I want the vulnerables, it's all about reaching out to the LC1 chairperson, say, identify the vulnerables you have in your village.
How sure are you that the LC has not addressed and registered his or her relatives to benefit on the need anyway?
But you can.
What's the margin of error there?
No, but you can as well come in as the leadership committee and sit at different villages and identify the vulnerables.
Sarah, let's talk about the vulnerables now. What could be the best measures to identify and reach out to these people?
You see, Chamagira, the biggest challenge of this country is the lack of planning. They always operate by try and error. And the government had sort of lost touch with the people because the economy in Uganda thrives on market forces. So government does their usual, knee-jerk things, but Ugandans have been progressing based on their own efforts and market forces.
They thrive.
Yes, thrive. But the COVID-19 is like when your house is blown off by wind. When the shelter is blown off and it's in the air, everybody will see what is inside. So our government has been exposed. It's zigzag planning. It's failure event. Prepare for the obvious. Is all there out there. But when you want to trace the vulnerable, first of all, we have the Equal Opportunities Act. True. Its policy and strategy documents clearly define who a vulnerable person is. So I saw the first week of lockdown, the Prime Minister gambling, we shall identify vulnerable, we shall trace mobile money transactions, irrelevant things. So what government needs is to get the definition of a vulnerable person, to get the definitions from UBOS of the poor, the immediate poor, those whose businesses are in lockdown. All these statistics are available in national agencies. Pick out that information, the sectors which are out, the food vendors, the borders, the taxis, and do planning. Getting these statistics could take 1, 2, 3 days. And then this is the population we are planning for. Then how do we plan for it? How do we budget? Parliament is closed for 2 weeks.
Yet we bought for them iPads.
And all other parliaments worldwide are operating virtually. So you see our parliament, which is supposed to be also helping and dynamic, saying we cannot operate because people are sick. Why can't they go virtual? So we have all this crisis nationally. So now we need supplementary funds.
Yes.
For handling COVID, for testing, treatment, vaccination, and reliefs. It's not a simple money like that we have 58 billion. What is 58 billion? Half population of people that now need help.
Yeah.
To the essential drugs that are missing. To the lack of oxygen. I saw a documentary yesterday with oxygen drops in Umurango. And why people are dying? Because it's not enough to sustain patients.
Well, Sarah, the PS yesterday said that they had plans to actually have adequate oxygen, but the procurement laws are the ones failing her.
That's why I'm saying even the likes of Minister of Health should have taken lessons from the first phase of COVID. So these are the lessons, these are the challenges, this is why we did not meet our targets. The president keeps talking of directing the team to procure 42,000
beds, yes.
And we have about 3,500 as we talk. So all this gap, less than 10% of what the president had told them to prepare.
We can cover
They should have done a document of lessons, challenges, and what needs to be put in place. Did they do that? Because now Diana has no locus to come to people lamenting.
She says the laws are really breaking her.
Did she bring this to the attention of planners? That the current laws are not favorable in addressing such a public health emergency. Why is she raising it now?
Because times
I never had that debate before.
Coming back to you, Mariam Naluwega, the conversations are really tough. The Auditor General report that came out was very clear. It said that some of the funds that were given in the first wave, the accountability issues, it was shooting beyond the roof. This time around, with the funds and the relief coming via mobile money, is your government trying to curb corruption in one or the other?
No, the reason as to why the funds are coming via mobile money is to control body-to-body contact.
Okay. So it's nothing accountability like...
It's not accountability like, because if you deliver food personally to the person, you can either carry the disease to the person or the person can carry the disease to you.
Absolutely.
So the best means of reaching out. By the way, whoever wants to reach out to anyone in the country should use mobile money.
Okay.
Don't reach out to people, because the more you reach out to people, the more you carry the disease.
You get
it's
in
not
contact.
Accountability.
Now, we had these people who came out and they said, I have given this much, I've given this much in the fight against COVID-19. We saw lots of money that were coming through in the first wave. Actually, some monies came in when it was actually coming to the end of the first wave. This time around, we don't see accountability for such funds. Should we trust government with this second wave, with a lot of monies and the donations that would come through?
About the donations and the money that was given during the first lockdown, I've been asked a similar question before on different medias, but I distanced myself.
Why?
I said I will not talk because
you represent the president.
Yes, I do represent the president, but I was not among the accounting committee.
You head the task force in Luero.
I do head the task force.
The donations that are coming to you, how do you account for them?
No, we didn't get us in rural areas. By then I was in Rengo. Us in rural areas, we didn't get any donations.
Let's assume.
The donations were in urban areas.
Let's assume you're in Luero and I have a company and I'm donating this much money to the task force as a token to fight COVID-19. What systems do you have in place to account for these kind of funds?
When you receive funds as the task force, you sit down and allocate and find out the areas that really need that money and you give it out.
Okay.
All plans in the district are done through the task force. They are not done at an individual level.
Okay.
So it is always the task force that reach out and account for the money.
Sarah, a little bit about the Auditor General's report. The accountability issue, monies were not tallying up. But people were hiding here and there. We're looking for someone to account for monies, and it wasn't coming up. Does this give Ugandans the guts to donate again in this second wave, if they can? Like you said, you give what you have to a brother or sister.
Well, I don't know, because most of the donations in the first lockdown were driven by private sector.
True.
Private sector is the most hit now. They even lost their executive director.
Very upset.
Yeah. So, given the struggle, because Ugandans are basically on their own, I know government has been warning people, stop self-prescription, stop, don't take Covidex. But what choices has government presented to them?
Options.
There are no other options. So people are struggling. Every family has, or every Ugandan has a relative or friend who is in a crisis for treatment funds. People are mobilizing every WhatsApp group. Please send in help. Our old schools groups, please send in help. So what choice do Ugandans really, when we are busy treating ourselves, do we have time to take money now to the government? I don't think it will happen. Because Ugandans are handling a crisis of treatment, exorbitant costs, where government is not coming in to subsidize and take charge of treatment. We are handling a crisis of our, because we all have dependent families, most of us. So you find a person, as much as you are at work, Chamagero, you could have 20 dependents.
Very much so.
And the cost of living is so high. Even some goods in the shops. Because if you go to the relief plan of sending cash handouts, which is good, and our neighbors can implemented that during
and it worked.
And it worked because it irons out middlemen, it removes the procurement hurdles, and the money goes direct to the intended beneficiary. It is good. And we have a senior citizens grant in this country that is implementing the same cash handouts for years. And it has worked. So the government does not even need to benchmark from far. So it works, but it will create inflation because of this big purchasing power of families buying food. And the prices are likely to hike when this money is distributed. So government should be planning on how to stabilize inflation for food prices.
I hope it doesn't go to the double digits.
The report by UBOS on customer price index, it shows that in the first lockdown, there was an increment of between 32 to 37% on customer price index. But specifically, no, it was a 3.5 increment. Specifically for maize, it was 32% to 37%. So that is the inflation, I don't know, that the government needs to plan for on food prices as this money is rolled out, if at all it is about to be rolled out.
Well, your feedback on digital spaces, I'm reading some of your tweets. Brayo Ntali says, a real vulnerable person doesn't own a phone, doesn't even know how a SIM card really looks like. And someone here says, Madam Mariam, thank you so much for coming, your conversation and you being real. I love it, but does government equally plan for those in the Zombo forests and the likes? Because to him, he thinks that they plan for those just in the city centers. Then Ande says Uganda does not need to learn from Kenya on cash transfers. Just use the model that was used by Red Cross and the World Food Programs and the NGOs in Uganda. This has been operational for long. Then another person says fast food that was given out in the first lockdown was bad. Now, why give food again? Even in South Sudan, they gave out cash, so we don't need the food. Someone here says, let me just read this message. This one says that, well, I really want to commend you, Mariam, for the guts and the strength you have to tell us that all is bad, but all will be well. We are at war, and we need to feed one another. Tell you what, I've been in my house for the last few days. I have nothing to eat. I have borrowed from the local duka, and like I fear even to pass by the same local duka. And when leaders like you on national television are telling us to share, but that is a Bonnie Mbowa on Twitter. As a leader, Mariam, how is the handling of this entire situation, the political ramifications of implementing these tough measures? How hard is it for you, especially in Luwero, for this instant?
Yeah, it's really hard. First of all, our lives are at a risk. We are exposed. Recently we had a district tour whereby we reached out to all the Gombolola and all the town councils to sensitize the Gombola Task COVID force about how to go about with the measures of COVID-19. So the first challenge we encounter, we are exposed. Sometimes you work and you're not sure of your life at the end of the day. We are working in exposure to, like I mentioned in my first paragraph as we were discussing, people still take COVID as a myth. People think COVID is not there. When people die of COVID, people think they were poisoned. Others think they were bewitched. Some people are still looking at COVID-19 as witchcraft.
Is it an issue of the messaging? Are you using the right vehicles and the right format of messaging to the people?
Yes, we are. We are. But as you know, there are people who take long to understand. Even when HIV was here, people took HIV as witchcraft for some time. It is only today that people are beginning to embrace and understand HIV. So the same scenario is happening to COVID. People are not really, they don't understand the disease as yet. So we have a lot of sensitizations to do. Right, we are doing the sensitization, but we should double and triple our efforts. And the way I've been seeing the messages going around, the messages are only in 2 languages. They're only in Luganda and English. Moreover, we have a diversity of languages in Uganda. So I would also appeal that let's put these COVID-19 messages in other local languages. Otherwise, people have failed totally to understand.
Do you share these
this
opinions
is the reason
with
why
the people in the ministry or with your
Yes,
with
we write reports. We write weekly. Now in this
20
era
days
also,
later, these messages are not coming through though.
Yes.
20 days later in the lockdown, because we took the first 10, once I count the first 10 and these 2 weeks, that makes it 24 days. You've shared all this with the task forces and the health ministry, but still the messaging still comes in the 2 languages. What's not happening?
I don't know what is happening, but they should work on that. Otherwise, people who speak different languages,
they'll miss out.
They are missing out on the COVID-19 messages. Therefore, that is also an issue. We should do a lot of sensitization is needed. We should really reach out and teach people how COVID-19 affects the nation. Otherwise, if we don't sensitize the people, we shall not curb this disease.
Wow.
So those are the challenges that we are facing, and then some other challenges that I'll not mention.
In these tough times, I understand the president is in a very juxtaposition. He doesn't need to be liked or whatsoever, or to be popular among the populace. How is his image and reputation holding up in Luwero? Are people appreciating the measures that are being taken, or they feel a little bit, unfairly attacked business-wise and socially?
I want to quote the Wagandas. The Wagandas say that actually chiro omusima bukede. Yes, actually chiro omusima bukede. As per now, it is hard. Everyone is facing it hard in the country. Those ones who are enforcing the COVID-19 guidelines are facing it hard. Even these ones who are supposed to adhere to the guidelines are also facing it hard. What is actually in the country, like you said, is depression. Everyone is depressed. We are in a war. We have this disease we don't really understand. And the president is on the national television telling people, wash your hands, do this and do the other. So as per now, he might not be appreciated. But as we overcome the storm later, I know Ugandans will appreciate. But as we are still in a battle.
Have you seen some politicians politicizing the war where we are? And what's your thought on that?
Yes, it has been, especially during the campaign it was politicized.
Oh, even now, I saw the other day on Twitter someone saying, it baffles me though, but you as leaders, have you worked with opposition leaders, where you're coming from, who have understood the magnitude of what you're dealing with and how sensitive it is?
Yes, I would like to appreciate Luwero District Chairperson. He's a new person. He's a member on our COVID-19 task force, and we are working hand in hand. By the way, I'm still appealing to all Ugandans. Right now, we are not in blame games. We are in a war.
We need solutions.
It's a time to come together and unite and brainstorm on what to do in these hard times. But if you start blaming the other, blaming this one, it will not deliver us at the end of that day. So I would like to appreciate the chairperson of Luwero. He's of NOP. But the way we come together, the way we converge,
that's leadership,
to find solution on how to curb COVID-19, I just love the teamwork. Therefore, I also appeal to other members of opposition and other members in government. Let's work, let's come together, let's work together. This is not the time to abuse each other. This is not the time to seek for cheap political popularity. We are in war, we are dying, and we need to be alive.
Very much so.
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy RDC. Coming to you, Sarah Birete, what could be your parting shots in this way of where we are? What should government do, or the leaders, and the call to action to ask the citizens?
Well, my call to government, first of all, is to take charge of the pandemic.
You don't feel they're in
Make
charge?
make sure there is services for treatment. Make sure there are essential drugs, testing, treatment, immunization, and livelihood in that first step.
Nice.
In the absence of those 4 steps, ability to treat, test, treat, immunize, and save livelihoods, then we will have no counter economy to talk about after lockdown. And the way we manage second wave will determine whether we shall face third wave or not, or fourth or fifth. Yeah. So the actions that government is going to take are very critical in reducing and reversing the curve for spread of the pandemic, or accelerating the nation third, fourth, and fifth wave.
Wow. That's a conversation we've had. I really want to thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deputy RDC. Thank you so much, Sarah Birete. We will have these heated conversations as countrymen, but just to make sure that we find lasting solutions as Ugandans. Those who have been on Twitter following this conversation, I really want to thank you so much. Your opinions have been registered here. Mutabazi, Monica, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Shekul says government should go to statistics and get the right definition of the vulnerable instead of gambling with words. Oh God, some of you are very bitter, but well, we will take it slow. And thanks for being a part of this. Mutumba Nelson, Everest Musinje, Muhindo J Don, and so many others. As we finalize this show, I want to tell you that COVID is real and COVID kills. As a survivor, I'll tell you one thing. Wash your hands with clean running water and soap. Sanitize your hands wherever you can, and wear your mask. And your mask should cover, you know, the soft spots, your nostrils and your mandibles. Don't just leave the nose outside, because that's a fertile ground for it to actually get into you, and you'll get the effects quite very bad. That said, I want to remind you that whatever you're doing, stay away from crowds. Stay away from crowds. If you can avoid some people, please avoid home. Stay safe, but run around, stay fit, as we wait for the message coming from the Right Honorable Nabanja Robin, the Prime Minister. You and I are still waiting for our 100,000 Ugandan shillings. Very unrealistic, but we will take what they're giving us and we survive. I'm Andrew Chamagero. Coming up shortly, we'll have a Farida Nakaziwe.